Hey guys, it's Derrick here with On the Horizon podcast, and today we're coming at you on set here at the NFR.
Yep.
We're at Cowboy Christmas, and I have got Miss Kirsten Vold of Vold Rodeo Company here, which if anybody in the space is, I'm going to say, if you've been in the rodeo any amount of time, you would know this company.
You don't have to make me quite
well,
sound so old.
I didn't want to not only that, but like you said, your dad's been like famous in this world. The amount of Hall of Fame animals you've had, the amount of, and the one we've got here in the corner with Crooked Nose, and we appreciate you letting that come to the Bedrock booth. And but anyway, thank you so much for being on. It's an honor for me to be able to sit down and talk to you and get a chance to learn from one of the best, right?
Well, I appreciate it. Yeah, no, we're excited. Crooked Nose has been on the wall at that ranch. I don't know exactly how many years, but over 30, we'll just say.
No way.
Since
So is this the first time he's made it?
This is the first time he's left that wall in a long time, so it's time for him to get back on the road a little
awesome.
bit. So
Well,
it was good to come back to Las Vegas.
It's been so awesome for us to see people come by and see the display of him and be like, oh my gosh. And it's funny how many people that I didn't know tracked him. It was like, and people have said, oh my gosh, that's the first time it's been out.
Yeah.
And so I love it. I would love to, let's start out a little bit. Just tell everybody who's listening just a little history of Vold Rodeo Company and then how you got involved. And then I want to spend a lot of time or a good amount of time just earning the story between Crooked Nose. So let's start with, when did this company get started?
Well, my he's from Canada, and he originally come across, and he was in partners with a couple different people. And then in 1971, he started all over again by himself. And so then that started the Vold Rodeo Company.
Yep.
And then he passed in 2017, so I had been working underneath him until then. And at that point, then I inherited it, and I take it on since then. So it just kind of evolved from there. But yeah, no, I mean, it's been a good business, and he did a good job of sticking a good game plan in front of me and the footsteps to follow. And you just got to be careful when you're following footsteps that you do a good job to follow them and not screw it up along the way.
So let's go back to growing up in this space, right? And I'm sure that everybody can remember, like, what is your first, I'm going to say, rodeo memory or animal memory, like like, how to say this, first horse you remember having that you're like, man, I know that I want to be involved in rodeo and this is something that you're going to do long term. Like, do you remember
Well,
that?
I didn't really have that memory. I thought I was going to do something better. But that being said, I can tell you the first horse story. I had a black horse named Sage that was, I think, my babysitter. And, back then you could kind of let your kids run rampant and you didn't have to worry so much about somebody snatching them. And so I had this black horse and I could go and halter him. He'd stick his head down and eat, and then I'd get him haltered. And I'd throw it around there, and then I'd have to drag him over somewhere where he would be eaten, and I'd throw my leg over, and then when he'd lift his head, I'd slide onto his back because I wasn't big enough to, get on him anywhere unless I drug him over to a fence. And he was a good babysitter.
That's awesome.
He'd take me all over the rodeo grounds, and when I look back at horses like that, that horse was, gosh, how much was that horse worth, right?
Oh yeah. And that's what we've talked about with a lot of people here is just what have you seen? Now I ask you this question: what have you seen change? In this space from when you started to today? Like, what's the biggest thing that's different?
I would say the biggest thing that's different is obviously the money and recognition the rodeo's gotten.
Yeah.
When we first started coming out here, I guess 85 was the first year, wasn't it? First year I was here, I know I was 11 years old the first time I came out here. I don't even know what year that was, but I think it's 85. Yeah. And anyway, so it was a great big city, obviously, Vegas then, but kids just were not part of Las Vegas.
Yep.
The rodeo was, it was this big thing, but it wasn't immersing the entire city. And obviously the money has grown. When we first came out here the first time, we left Oklahoma City and, we were all saying goodbye to those people. We're like, well, they signed a 5-year contract, but we'll be back in 5 years. We'll see you, everybody's waving. And we're like, oh yeah, we'll be back in 5 years. We're going to this big city out in the desert, but we'll be back. And I look back at that now, and I'm like, wow, what a weird idea that was. What can you imagine, And awesome. It's come out here to Las Vegas, and it's just grown, and the rodeo's grown. And I do believe that the NFR itself has been so instrumental in the fact that rodeo as a sport has just evolved and grown so much, because the NFR has made it such a fan-friendly thing. It's made it such an activity. It's integrated so many different cultures, sports fans and stuff like that. And so when you take that and you make it so nationwide, worldwide, then it makes rodeo back in Oklahoma, Texas, Colorado, Nevada, Nebraska. It just grows fans all the time. And then when you add more money, you add more exposure, more sponsors, all of that grows the sport. And then we've made Cowboy so much more accessible through the Cowboy channel and podcasts and so many different ways that people get to know them better and they feel like people that they know.
Yeah.
And anytime they're people that they know, they're invested in them. So then people spend their vacations and they go to different rodeos throughout the country to visit them because these are part of their lives, you know? And I think anytime you do that, you grow a sport. And that's been a great thing, and I think it all started here in Las Vegas.
Well, I had so fun. To kind of piggyback on that, we were riding with one of our Uber drivers, and he said, "Oh, I love this week." I said, "Why do you love this week?" He said, "Oh, Cowboys are so friendly." It's like it's an opportunity for us to kind of relax and have fun. And we brought our son out last year, and I agree with you. It's like, ooh, because we go to SHOT Show in Seaman, like, do I really want to bring our son to Vegas? And I would think just the fact that a lot of the athletes come through here, got a chance to do autographs and meet people, and it really like personalized rodeo for him and encouraged him to want to do more in it. So I think it's one of the things that I would recommend people that if you have any interest in it, just bring your kids out there. Go see the rodeo.
Rodeo has so many heroes in this sport, and they're good role models for kids. They're patriotic. These guys are tough. How many of these guys are riding every night with, Rocker Steiner's got a broke bone in his hand, all kinds of torn ligaments. He got on 2 horses last night. I mean, there's no crying in rodeo. Like, he's not over there, crying or sad or he's cheering. Like, there's no quit.
Well, then Josh Frost, same time last night.
I know.
And he almost, we were like, I was surprised he almost rode the bull back out of the ground. I was like, oh, that would have been so amazing. But
they do. I mean, these guys are just so tough, and they're just, they're not guaranteed money, and they're not sitting here with lawyers negotiating their contracts. They're just out there, a true grit, and they're good people, and they're husbands and their fathers, and they're somebody's sons, their daughters, and I mean, there's just so many great, there's so many great features and characteristics with contestants and rodeo cowboys that they're a great role model for kids growing up to follow after.
What's your favorite sport to watch or be involved in? Come on.
What sport?
Yeah,
rodeo.
well, no, I'm saying, no, sorry. Which
event?
Event, yeah, sorry.
Oh, I mean.
Oh, I knew that.
I'm a horse person. Like, I love the bucking horses. So, my dad was always a little more partial to the bronc riding, and I get teased all the time that I throw all the good horses in the bronc riding. And I really don't mean to. They kind of evolve and they get there sometimes. But, I love a good bucking horse that just loves to do what he does, whether that's the bareback riding or the saddle bronc riding. I'll always just love the bucking horses.
So right now, the horse name that you have it's just your favorite.
Oh, my favorite that I have right now that's here? Well, he just won a buckle last night, so I'm pretty proud of Crossbreed's Captain Hook. But tonight, Cap Favors K's out, so I might be pretty proud of that one too.
Awesome.
So everybody makes fun of my names, not makes fun of them, but they're like, "Where do you get these names?" I'm like, on the signs or here or there.
Well, let's talk about that. Yeah, because there are some crazy names. We were talking last night with a couple of friends. Well, this company likes to start with a letter and do this and that thing. So what is the method, or is there a method in naming these?
There is. There's a lot of it. A lot of times you try to integrate their parents' name in it, So like I got a Breezy Fling that'll be out tomorrow night. Well, his dad is Painted Fling, so that's where you got a whole bunch of flings on the ranch, and stuff like that. And his mom was Breezy Weather, and his dad was Painted Fling, so he became Breezy Fling. So that's awesome. How some of those names come out.
So as a contractor, how many animals are you doing? How many bucking horses? How many bulls? Like that you are personally involved with and inventorying and like? I mean,
every animal on that ranch, I'm personally involved with.
So how many numbers are we? Like how many are we talking? Hundreds?
No, I mean, well, in the horses, a couple hundred, and in the bulls, I've got 27. I mean, I don't have a ton of those. Yeah. They tear stuff up. I don't need any extras there. They eat a lot and they tear a bunch of stuff up.
So speaking of tearing stuff up, let's talk about Crooked Nose.
Yeah, what about him? He made it back to Vegas after all these years.
So give us, for people who don't know, there's some great, like I was saying, there's some great YouTube videos of people fighting that bull, and then some really great stories of why he only has one horn. So give us, that is, it may understand, that is the first bull as a fighting bull ever inducted into the Hall of Fame.
It is, and what a great honor.
That is amazing.
It really is. It was a great honor. He was kind of a, he was a trademark bull for the Wrangler bullfights whenever those came out, and they were a big deal back then. And, he was part of that movement when it started. And I think, his fighting style, of course, let's be honest, with the one horn and everything like that, they made him look special. And, then the Wrangler bullfights put him on their poster. Well, we have the original painting actually hanging in our living room.
Oh, no, that's awesome.
Yeah, so I mean, it's, they did so much with him, and he was just characteristic. The good thing about him, so many of these are super hot, and he just kind of saved himself for whenever he needed it. And that was, those bulls handled pretty good in the back. I learned how to work bulls from my dad, and that's how we still work our bucking bulls the same way. We always feed them, and we always grain them in a different pen than they're at, or I move them out of that pen and I move them back in. Bulls, Dad just told me if they bulls leave a pen and they go somewhere where there's food, it's always easier to work them. And he started that method with the fighting bulls because they weren't always easy to handle. So that's why we started doing that, and we just do it with the bucking bulls and stuff. And so, Crooked Nose he was good to handle, but he was still a fighting bull. We talk about at the end when he was retired, and he just lived in a pen right there at the ranch until he died. And one day, the old man that was feeding him there was talking about how he took a bucket of grain to him, and usually he was always just kind of laying down in the corner. And that day, he kind of put his grain out to him. He was walking back to the water, and he looked back, and he was right behind him. And that bull was old then, and Doc had to climb up the fence. And I don't know what got into him that day, but apparently maybe he was late. I don't know.
Another run.
He just decided, he was going to give him a little run for his money. So we always kind of laughed about that story that, that was maybe a month or so before he even died, but he still, right till the end was like, what, don't turn your back on me. That's not smart.
So you said you came out in 85 and you're around 11. And so when did he retire officially?
I don't honestly know that. I know you guys I figured you're probably going to ask me
that. No, I was just curious.
And I was like, hopefully somebody had already done the research. Tyler is he does all the research and everything, so I was hoping he already had that somewhere.
I was curious what's your first...
I don't know what year the last year was that he fought out here, and then it was a couple years later or so, I'd imagine, whenever, because he lived at the ranch for quite a while till he died. He died of natural causes. We just, kept him there and everything, but I don't honestly know what year that is.
That's awesome. What's your first memory of seeing him fight?
I don't know if it was my first one, but I do remember we were in Dodge City, Kansas one time, and right before the bullfights, this rain came out of nowhere. I don't know if you've ever been there before. It can get some hellacious storms, and it was raining so hard, it started raining, and they let him out, because he called for him, and then it got raining so hard you couldn't see him in the arena. And so the guy's out there, and Crooked Nose is out there, and we couldn't see him, and they couldn't see. He couldn't see Crooked Nose, but Crooked Nose found him. I mean, it was kind of sketchy. You knew there was stuff going on in the arena, but nobody could see it. And I don't even remember who that was. I'm sure that bullfighter remembers who he was, but I don't remember who it was fighting. I just remember that it just happened so fast, there was no way to stop it. And he was already out in the arena, and he was out in the arena, and that rain came down, and it was just solid blackout. It was kind of crazy.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Well, so let's talk a little bit. You made a couple comments, and it's fun. I read a lot about you, and you made a couple comments where it's like, well, I never expected to be doing this job. I expected to be doing this, or my life is going this way. So when did you start getting really involved or really taking over the Vold Rodeo Company? And if I can, I'm going to push you a little more.
Yeah.
Why were you thinking that it wasn't the thing for you?
Oh, when you're growing up, you got big plans, you know. This rodeo's all good and all, but I'm going to do better stuff. I've got big plans to be a superstar doing something. I was going to drive a sports car. I was going to be a lawyer one time until I took a law and ethics class in college and figured out that wasn't going to be my path. And anyway, so I knew I liked rodeo and I wanted to keep it but I thought I wanted a corporate world. There's so many corporate sponsors and stuff even back then, and I thought that would be more my speed. And I could do rodeo, but I wanted to kind of be a little higher up than where I was on the feed crew. And so I graduated in December of 96, and I took my finals a week early so that I could come out here. I started a job with Rodeo America, which at that time was they made all the NFR coats and stuff. And so I went to work for them in December of 96, and I came out here. This was my first gig, and I worked for Bob Bellino, and I was his personal assistant, and we did this, and then I went to live in Amarillo and worked there for 6 months, and it was a great experience. I got a dose of the corporate life and everything, and did some shows and stuff, and then there was a record label that it was doing a PRCA rodeo album at the same time, and I worked with them doing the licensing.
Oh, cool.
And so then I decided about 6 months later in 97 that my dad was kind of needing some help, and I missed the rodeo trail, and I kind of missed being around the animals and stuff like that and stuff. So I left that, and when that record label found out I was leaving, they wanted to hire me to do on-site promotions and stuff for them, and they were out of New York City. So it was lucky because I kind of for a while got to have best of both worlds.
Like I said, you got a pretty good run of corporate.
They flew me to where is it in Canada, where Columbia Records had a spot, where the Blue Jays play, Toronto. They flew me into Toronto, and they put me up in this big hotel that overlooked the Toronto Blue Jays field. And I mean, it was like a scene out of Pretty Woman. I was jumping up on the beds, and they had a box of chocolates, and they had a big robe there waiting for me. And I was like, oh yeah, this is what I was wanting, right? So I got to do a little of both worlds, and then I got to rodeo and that was kind of spring of '97 was when I came back for Dad, or that summer, I guess I should say. And then I've just been staying in this role. It just got more encompassing as the years progressed and stuff. But I don't even know. I guess that's almost 30 years.
That's amazing.
That went by quickly.
That's awesome. So tell me a little bit, for me to know, and like I said, I think people find this interesting, stock contractor or a rodeo contractor, how does an animal make it to NFR? So
it's selected by the Cowboys that qualified here.
Okay.
So, the top 15 in the world towards the end of the season, which is in September, they go in and they select the animals that they want. And they start, because all the stock contractors in the PRCA can nominate whatever stock. Each animal has to have 8 trips throughout the year at a PRCA sanctioned rodeo to be eligible to nominate them.
Okay.
And then they got to submit at least 3 videos of that animal. And so they do all that, and then the contestants have that list, and they go through and they pick the animals that they want. And, you might not notice this, but there's 5 rounds. The animals go twice here in theory.
Yep.
So the first 5 rounds are split into 5 pins, whether that's the bareback riding, the saddle bronc riding, or the bull riding. They pick, it's either, they call it the E pin, which is the eliminators, or the hoppers, or the spinners, if it's the bulls, or last night was the TV pin. So that's how they label them, and then they try to pick the animals that'll fit the best in those pins from the list of animals that were nominated. And there's a lot of animals nominated,
That's awesome.
I mean, it's, that they can't all get in there. Not everybody can get a trophy.
That's cool.
It's not like 5th grade,
Yeah.
that's like all the races now in kids where everybody gets a ribbon, even the kid in the last place. It's not like that. They don't give you a ribbon if your animal's not selected. So.
That's amazing. So, that's funny. So so you got to get them to 8 events?
Yeah, PRCA events, like sectioned events, they have to have them give them to 8 trips that year to be even eligible, and then they select them, and then they get that far, they get here. And then out of here, they pick which ones they want buck that night, and then they'll have 5 of them each night, the sleep and the re-ride pin, they call it.
Gotcha.
And
So two things I want to expand on or ask a question on. So how do you pick what animals you're going to try and get the 8 runs on?
Well, usually most all of them will have 8 trips on.
Okay.
But you kind of know from what they've won on them and which ones they like, which ones to even nominate. I mean, I'm not going to nominate a bunch of horses that have no chance of coming here.
Yeah.
There's no point. For one thing, they charge you $50 every time you do it. And another thing, even if they didn't, my hand would cramp up. You got to write all this information down. Like, I'm not doing that just for nothing.
Yeah.
And I kind of feel like that dilutes your product. Like if I nominate 20 horses when I really know these 3 only have a chance of going, that kind of dilutes the fact that these guys she thinks all 20 of these horses are coming, and they're not.
Yeah.
They're not even that quality.
Yeah.
So in my mind, I only nominate what I think will come out here and not embarrass me.
Yep.
That's where I set that's where I set the bar. Sometimes that list is shorter than others each year, but that's how.
So how many animals do you have out at this NFR?
I have 1 bareback and 3 broncs, so I have 4 animals.
Awesome.
So yeah, it's been good so far. So I'm proud of them. They've done good. I mean, it sounds bad, but you just hope whenever they buck, you set the bar pretty low. You just hope they're not the worst animal out that night. There's not a lot of places to hide in that Thomas and Mack when they are. So, and I've been that person before, so I know.
Well, and I thought it was neat, and I appreciate you explaining it, because that was something I heard yesterday, because I never did rough stuff, right? I grew up on a farm and ranch, and we did team roping, and roping's always been my thing. And then obviously you watch rough stock; it's the most fun to watch,
Absolutely.
right? And so I was learning last night about the different pin styles, and so they were like, "Oh, this is the TV pin. This is the showy animals." I'm like, "Oh, that is fascinating to me." So when you pick one, or they pick one for TV, what is showy in a bareback or a bronc? Like, what is considered a TV pin animal?
I think, there's so many great animals out here that I'm sure they have a hard time picking which ones they're going to put in the TV pin. But a lot of it is, they're animals that they can be, in theory, 90 or higher on, 90, you call it 90 or nothing,
Yeah, there was some good stuff last
There's
night.
some great horses that you stub your toe, you're going to get bucked off, but you have every opportunity to be, in the 90s on. And I think that's kind of where they set the criteria. And sometimes it goes that way, and sometimes it doesn't.
Yeah. Man, I tell you, and too, it's hard. We were watching last night and talking, and even talking to some of our friends back home. It's like it's really hard to explain scoring in rough stock.
Right.
And it was neat last night, because with NFR, you're like, it's such a small arena.
Sure.
Here's all the judges. You can kind of see who's doing what scores, and that guy must have been the one that was low because he couldn't see this. And so it's fun, all the nuances.
Yeah.
So how do you train, bronc and horses to get to this type of level?
If you could tell me, I'd be all about
Okay,
finding
all right.
out the
Well,
secret
I was
method.
curious. Like, I didn't know if there was some secret sauce where, like, hey, we raise all of our own, or we buy.
Right. There's
this,
not
or-
much training going on. You
Just all-
breed them. You breed genetics. You follow the genetics, and you know it's no different than you know, like race horses or anything else. If a stud runs really fast and the mare really runs really fast, and in theory their offspring should be a racehorse and run really fast. Doesn't always work that way.
Yeah.
Same way with the bucking horses. The stud bucks, the mare bucks. In theory, their kids should buck. Doesn't always work, but in thought process that it does.
So
you know.
how many do you go through when you're like, nope, that offspring didn't make it. Nope.
Not that many,
Okay.
because you know you kind of like the genetics. They don't make it here, obviously, but they make it to the rodeos and they're good and stuff like that. And sometimes the bucking horse isn't good enough even for us to take to our PRCA professional rodeos, but they work great at like the amateur level
Gotcha.
or college rodeos or something like that. So a lot of times there's a home for them somewhere
Gotcha.
in this industry. And every once in a while you hit one that, you know what, we can't train them to buck and they just don't want to buck.
Yeah.
And if that's the case, then we're lucky enough, usually they can break them to ride somebody.
hey.
Not very many of them.
Yeah.
You know, usually they had a little
Genetically,
too much.
they still got too much in 'em.
But there are some that just don't take to it, and so they'll go the other direction. So it happens. And that's like I said, we can't train them. We can't make them buck. They usually just really want to or not. When I say training, we'll say we have shoot school at the ranch. And so we run them through there, and we hang a flank on them, and we hang a rigging on them, and a bronc saddle, and a halter, and we do all that with them when they're younger, just so they're used to it, so that
Yeah.
when we get to a rodeo, it's not the very first time they get to experience
There's a lot
it.
going on for
There's
them,
a lot
too.
going on. So
I mean,
you-
between the fireworks and slamming and this shooting,
Absolutely.
and they seem to handle themselves so well, and then it's like game time.
They do, but you can't emulate this at home. You know,
Yeah.
we can do the hang the flank and the saddle, but I can't emulate something coming out of the sky and, you know, fire and all this other stuff. And some of that they just have to experience.
That's awesome.
And there's some rodeos you go to throughout the year that have pretty crazy openings, and quite honestly, that's kind of good for desensitizing them to it. And you don't know how well they're going to take it. Some of my older ones don't take it as well as some of my younger ones do. That's just a personality
Yeah.
thing. It's no different than how
Yeah.
each of us react to scary rides or this or that.
Yeah.
They have their person. Some of them are just like, okay, whatever.
So tell me, ma'am, you're teaching me, and I love it. So when you've got an animal in there, it seems to be, from a guy who's not a rough thought guy, counterintuitive that you kind of want somebody to ride and you kind of want them to score so that they win a buckle that night.
Sure.
And you're on the stage, but at the same time it seems like you want an animal that's like unrideable. It's like a weird, like
Sure.
where is the line between
You
I really
want-
want somebody to ride my animal or I want them to get bucked off?
I think what you want them to always buck as hard as they possibly can. And you want to get that cowboy to give them every opportunity to buck them off while still making a great ride.
Interesting.
And here's my thing, like, I want you to ride him, but I want you to let him be as good as he can be. So a lot of times these guys, if they're afraid they're going to get bucked off or they're trying to stay in the average or something, they'll kind of safety up and they'll pull on their head more, and that horse doesn't have the opportunity to be as good as he can be. So I would prefer him get bucked off than have that.
Yeah.
But I still, at the end of the day, you want, like, those 90s are so few and far between.
Yeah.
You know, like for the guys to get them and the horses to get them. So I'd always rather go for 90 over nothing.
Yeah.
But just give them the opportunity to be as great as that animal can be and let the cards lay where they may.
That's awesome. And I appreciate you explaining that because I've always wondered, I'm like, man, I think I would be behind the scenes, but come on, buck him off.
Right.
Are you rooting for your horse or are you rooting
I'm
for...
rooting for the horse, and I want him to do as good as he can do. And if that cowboy can ride him and do a great job, then that's even better. Like, that's icing on the cake.
I love it. That's awesome. Well, so one thing I like to always ask on our podcast, we kind of like wrap up, what is on your horizon? So like what, for your company, for you personally, what are you looking forward to? I know you got some great gear we were just talking about.
Christmas gear.
It's Christmas gear.
Not for me personally, but...
So what do what do you see coming or what are you looking forward to?
I'm just looking forward to 2025 going as good as 2024 did. We've had a great year. It was ups and downs just like everybody has, but we didn't suffer any serious losses. The animals stay healthy. And going into 2025, that's just all you're hoping for. You're hoping that you can go to the rodeos that you have, put on a great event, have rodeo fans come and enjoy it. Injuries are minimal to contestants and horses and bulls and animals, and you just want rodeo to grow. And anytime I've had bad years, it seems like when you have started a bad year, it just kind of trickles down to the rest of the year. And so I got to be honest, I just hope 2025 is a good year and it just continues rolling on.
All right, so I'm going to ask you one more question. I'm going to hold you to this one.
All right.
Looking over the next 2 years,
Yeah.
what horse name is going to be here at NFR that we need to start looking at? What young horse have you got? They're like, oh
that
man,
isn't here yet now.
Yep.
You know, I have one. I have a paint called Fantasy Fling.
Well, I love paints.
And yeah, I got quite a few
They show well.
I got quite a few paints. And I think he's got the ability to be here. You know, I didn't nominate him this year because his mind just hasn't caught up to his body.
How old is he?
He's 7.
Okay. Oh, wow.
And normally that's old enough to nominate him to come here, and he had the trips and everything, but he just, like, it took us a while to kind of get him where he stood good in the chutes and he rolled and he did all that stuff. And you bring him out here too soon and it just blows their mind, and then you can't ever bring him back because they just didn't have a good showing.
Gotcha.
So I'd rather, it's kind of like you save a baseball player, you save his arm and you don't overexpose him. And that's kind of how I feel. So I think he has the ability. I might be wrong. We'll find out this year because we'll buck him a little bit more and see. But I think he has the ability to get here if we can ever get his mind to grow, catch his ability, and he gets with the right guys and he learns, you know, that it's fun. Then I think he has a good shot of being here. So, you know, we'll find out, I guess.
You ever jump on one?
Not on purpose. I've been on a frisky flag horse one time that won, but I was by far an accident. I promise you. I misjudged the situation.
Love it. Well, hey, I appreciate so much you coming down. I enjoyed the time with you. And
thanks.
guys, be sure and check out Crooked Nose on YouTube. Check out Vold Rodeo Company. Kirsten, thank you so much for being on here. Guys, be sure and like and subscribe. We have more coming at you from the NFR Cowboy Christmas as we roll up the week here, and we'll catch you later.